Hey yo, welcome to the Quniverse. I'm your host Q, and welcome back to Zero to Dread. So last time, I ended up covering one of the best Metroid games to date, that being Super Metroid, and today we continue our journey with Metroid Fusion. So this game is definitely the boldest game in the series of what is considered to be the golden age of Metroid. It's not as free like its predecessors, but instead it's very story heavy. Definitely a different direction for sure. It comes off as a mixed bag for a lot of people, or at least that's so I thought until I actually did research on this game. My point is, this game still has issues that I'll dive into here shortly. So because this one's so story heavy, here's your spoiler warning for this title. If you care about the lore, I'd recommend playing it first, then coming back to the video. With all that out the way, let's jump into it. So remember how Super Metroid was the start of the Golden Age? While that still rings true, this game did not come out until November 18th, 2002 in the US, 8 long years after Super Metroid. A huge reason for this delay is because Nintendo struggled to find ways to evolve the series in the N64 era. They couldn't quite crack how Metroid should move forward, and so the series went dormant for a while because of it. The game also came out the same day as Metroid Prime 1 on the GameCube. Metroid Prime was the first time Metroid entered the 3D space, and it blew a lot of players away with just how well the game was crafted. Because of this though, Metroid Fusion fell to the wayside. However, over the years the game would see quite the resurgence. Nintendo R&D1 once again returned to develop this one, and while that might sound like we're backtracking, I promise it's not a bad thing. Fusion borrows a lot from Super Metroid. The controls, the HUD, the core gameplay, but everything feels much tighter and more refined. Samus always felt a bit floaty to me, but here, she controls buttery smooth. This title also introduced cutscenes into the game which breathes even more life into this world. They're downright gorgeous too, and blend really well with the GBA's pixel art style. It's also worth noting that the Game Boy Advance only had been out for about a year at this point. It was a system built to modernize 2D gaming, and Fusion felt like a perfect fit, like a natural continuation of what Super Metroid could have been if the SNES had evolved a little bit further. It showed that Metroid still had a place in the handheld space, even as Nintendo was pushing the series into 3D on console. Yoshio Sakamoto, who was also the lead director of Super, returns to direct this title as well. He wanted to take the title into a different direction by giving the game a stronger, more original story. I'll dive into this a little later on, just put a pin in for now. But the biggest shift has got to be the structure. So Metroid before this has mostly been an open world kind of 2D game where you can explore pretty much anywhere you want at your own pace. But this time around, Fusion follows a more mission-like setting where you are told what you need to do and where you need to go with a lot more dialogue thrown in. It's a different pace, but I can understand why others might drop this game because of this. Again, I'll dive into this over time.
I'd been assigned to watch over Biologic's research team, so I once again found myself on the surface of SR-388. It was there that I was attacked by a life form I had never encountered before. It was only later that I learned the identity of my attacker, the parasitic organism we now know as X. Unaware of my condition, I was returning to the station when disaster struck. Once the X had infested my central nervous system, I lost consciousness, and my ship drifted into an asteroid belt. The ship's emergency systems automatically ejected the escape pod before impact. Biologic's vessel recovered it and transported me to the Galactic Federation HQ. However, during the journey, the X multiplied within me, corrupting large areas of my power suit. It then came to light that the organic components of my power suit had become so integrated with my system that it could not be removed while I was unconscious. Large portions of my suit had to be surgically removed, dramatically altering my physical appearance. However, the X in my central nervous system were too embedded to be removed safely. I was given a minimal chance of survival. Then, someone found a cure. They proposed using a Metroid cell to make an anti-X vaccine. It seems that the Federation had managed to preserve a cell culture from the last infant Metroid from SR-388. The serum was prepared and injected without delay. The X parasites were immediately and completely destroyed. As for me, one life ended, yet I survived, reborn as something different. Pondering this fact, I realize I owe the Metroid hatchling my life twice over. We'll soon be arriving at the BSL Research Station. I must prepare for docking. The ship's computer has notified me of our approach to the Biologic Space Labs, or BSL, Research Station. During my surgery, the research team sent the last batch of creatures we captured there, as well as the infected pieces of my power suit. After regaining consciousness, I learned that an unexplained explosion rocked the station. For some reason, this awoke a nameless fear in my heart, and now I am being sent there to investigate. My mission on the BSL station will be overseen by my new ship's computer. Following the commands of this blunt, computerized CO is something I have to bear, as it was a condition of my taking the ship. For someone who dislikes taking orders, this is the second time I've found myself having to do so. Makes me recall my other CO.
This intro is surprisingly great, though it's unfortunately unskippable, so you'll have to watch it every time you play. I'll come back to the rest of the story later, but just know it's a major part of this game with some of the most memorable moments of the franchise. So as I mentioned, the gameplay is way more linear than before, especially with a route the game pushes you towards instead. I know some people hate the aspect of handholding because it sucks them out the experience, but I can tell you it equally sucks as much when you are lost to the point where you need to find a guide where to go next. That definitely sounds like a me thing, but I do believe there are people who don't like being that lost. Though I do believe the handholding is a bit much in this title, if I'm being honest. I'll explain this in a little bit. But first, let me talk about the movement. This title perfected it, plain and simple. You jump and shoot with A and B respectively, which is simple but ideal. But now you can press the L button to diagonally shoot your beam upward and hold down while holding the L button to shoot diagonally downward. This change was a very small one, but I personally think it was for the better. Last thing, but now you can just hold the R button and press the B button simultaneously to shoot missiles, meaning you don't need to switch between an in-game menu, which thank goodness, because I hated navigating through this in Super so damn much. So yeah, the changes were minor all things considered, but definitely paid off in the long run, if I'm being honest. So as you start off and find your bearings, i.e. get used to the new movement, you'd have to talk to a computer named Adam in the navigations room. They tell you with a lot of text pretty much what's going on story-wise and where you need to go next, and you do just that. The area in this game is a lot smaller than its predecessors, so there's not much room for free roaming like before. Most areas are blocked off until you progress through. Which again, it may sound like a bad thing, but it's easily adjustable. So this game, instead of being on a planet, is now taking place on a space station named the Biological Space Labs Research Station, or BSL Research Station for short. This station has an operations deck, a habitation deck, a main deck, and 6 different sectors, though most of the game will be spent in the sectors outside of a few specific points. Each sector, I will say, are distinctively different enough to stand on its own 2 feet, which feels rather refreshing compared to Metroid 2's 10 sections. Sector 1, also known as SRX, is an SR-388 habitat simulation. This area is filled with lush vegetation, wildlife, and earthy terrain. It's a very natural and familiar vibe, but it's really brought to life with the updated pixel art style of the GBA. Sector 2, also known as TRO, is a more tropical and jungle-like area. This area is visually bright green and is filled with both natural and artificial structures. I actually really liked this area at first, but coming back here later on in the game, I really hate it. Not the area's fault, it's just more so the weird difficulty jump out of nowhere. I'll explain this a little later. Hey, you know what else was also a jungle? Upper Brinstar. Sector 3, also known as PYR, is a combination of deserts and volcanic areas. I think it's a unique enough area, but I really don't have too much to add on this one. Kinda cool they mixed two types of atmospheres like this somewhat seamlessly, but that's all I got really. It almost feels like they were recreating Norfair a bit. Sector 4, also known as AQA, is a very water heavy type of area. Yeah, this area is just okay. The first half of this area is sorta forgettable, but the second half is way more memorable. It's mostly explored after you get the gravity suit. Really love the visuals for the underwater sections, but that's about it. Sector 5, also known as ARC, is a frozen icy tundra area. I really love the aesthetics of this one a lot. I'm unsure, I guess I'm just a sucker for icy type areas like this. That and it's downright beautiful in this art style. It's pretty cozy but still unsettling with how much danger lurks around. It's also not an easy area. It's not. Sector 6, also known as NOC, is an area that is incredibly dark designed for nocturnal organisms. This area sticks out like crazy since it almost feels like you can get jumped at any given moment. It's not pitch black, but you do need to be careful traversing in here quite a bit with the limited lighting. Not to also mention, when you first explore this area, yeah, there's a lot of enemies that can almost one-shot you. For the first time. These sectors surprisingly have their own unique enough identity to actually make them memorable, which I'm really surprised upon entering each of them for the first time. I know I sound like a broken record, but the art style really does give life to these areas a lot. At times I forget they're just sectors, so the immersion is definitely there. At least for me it is. The devs finally figured out how to get the movement down to buttery smooth with an atmosphere that helps match it. Though it controls this great, I wish the game had more free space to run wild, but I digress. Although this isn't exactly a power-up you have to look for, the power grip is actually introduced in this title. It's very straightforward, but I do love this ability. All it does is let Samus grab edges, which is insanely good for platforming. It's very simple, but it's very intuitive. I should also point this out, but the wall jump unfortunately took a nerf from Super Metroid. In that title, you could bounce off the wall and into the same wall, pretty much have the ability to infinite climb. But in here, the wall jump has you jump far too out, essentially killing this ability. Wall jumping is still somewhat necessary, but it's definitely the weakest it has ever been here. I mean, it's really not saying much. This is only the second game that's had wall jumping. I should also mention this here real quick. Though you do naturally progressively get stronger, this title seriously knows how to make your power-up feel so quickly power-crept in a matter of minutes. You are stronger for a total of 5 minutes after getting a new power-up, but the game will quickly throw in tougher enemies just to make you feel as helpless as before. The enemies also do quite a bit of damage despite having the Varia suit, the gravity suit, and a bunch of E-tanks collected. It's a solid change of pace that really challenges the player. Last thing I want to mention here is the music. I think despite how crunchy it sounds because of it being on the GBA, the music sounds good and does an excellent job fitting the atmosphere of this game. I wouldn't call any of these songs unironically great or listen to them outside of here, but they serve their purpose. Though I can tell you Sector 1's theme is a banger, and I'm not surprised that it was this song that got remixed into Super Smash Bros. Brawl years later. This section will not take very long since there's not much new here. Every power-up returns from Super, but the only new power-up in this title is the Diffusion Missile, which is really cool, but it's not exactly a unique power-up. The speed boost got reworked a bit, so it works exactly as it did in Super. However, you no longer take damage while you Shine Spark, and when you hit a little cliff while your Shine Spark is active, you'll switch back into your running stance. This little change makes Shine Spark almost infinite if you get the timing down, but I'll dive into this a little bit later. The Super Missile is now merged with the normal missile, meaning your missiles will do tremendous damage when upgraded. Honestly, I like this a bit more since it means this is one set of power-ups you don't have to keep looking for throughout the game. I'm shocked this is the only title that decided to merge the missiles with the Super Missiles, but it is what it is. The other add-on to the missiles is the Ice Missiles. Pretty much all it does is add a freezing effect to your missiles. It's really a solid add-on to this power-up, and it's definitely great for stopping enemies in their tracks. Simple, but very intuitive. I know some of you are going to ask in the comments what happened to the Ice Beam. Well, Samus is weak to ice, so this was the best compromise for the Federation to come up with without killing her. Now, the Diffuser Missile allows Samus to charge up her missiles, causing it to do a mini explosion on impact when fully charged. You get this pretty late into the game, but it's actually not too bad of a power-up. Because you already have the freeze effect mixed with it, any enemy caught in the blast will be frozen in place. The radius of the blast is pretty big at that too, so it has its uses. That's all I gotta say about this one. Yeah, it's just one giant list of add-ons to the missiles in this title rather than new power-ups, which is a cool experiment for sure. Not amazing or anything, just cool. For this section, I'm going to only talk about the bosses themselves and how to face them. I'm not going to talk about any story beats whatsoever. For this title, there are 12 bosses, but the final 2 I'm going to leave off the list for plot reasons. Apologies ahead of time if I messed up saying any of these names, just know I tried my best. Alright, so for this game we got Arachnus X, ChargeCore X, Zazabi X, Ceres, BOX Security Robot, Barrier Core, Yakuza, Notori, Nightmare X, BOX Security Robot X, and finally, Neo Ridley. Arachnus is an armadillo-like creature that will attack you with slashes, shoot fireballs, and try to hit you with a rollout move. From just this alone, you could sorta tell which power-up you're gonna get from this. All you gotta do is just fire at its exposed chest with missiles. It's a very simple boss, but it will help condition you on how these fights will work. After sustaining enough damage, it will revert back to its shell-encased X form. At this point, you'll just need to shoot missiles at it until it eventually dies. After beating it, you'll end up getting, you guessed it, the Morph Ball. It's definitely a somewhat memorable first boss, but not much more than that. Zazabi is an odd-looking enemy that will hop around the room, but at one point it will jump incredibly high to then try to trap you inside of it, in which case it will do a lot of damage. However, when the boss jumps this far up, it'll open its base up and you can start attacking it with missiles. Just be sure to not get caught while attacking it with missiles. You'll keep doing this as each part of its body begins to blow off until there's nothing left outside of the head. Once you defeat the head, it'll revert back to its shell-encased X form. You know what to do at this point. Pack it up and grab the high jump boots. It's rather interesting that the bosses low-key use the power-up that you are trying to grab, which makes them stick out a little bit more. As for the boss itself, I like it, however, it doesn't leave too much of a lasting impression on me. It's fine. Ceres is a boss that moves at top speeds to try to deal damage to Samus. All you gotta do is find your openings to shoot a missile at it, though this isn't easy. You only have certain platforms to move on. However, you can go on the water to see where Ceres will appear from. You can take a shot at it, but just know the second you hit this boss on its head with a missile, it'll charge up and start moving at top speeds again. Not to also mention, since you don't have the gravity suit yet, you definitely aren't moving out of the way fast enough. It's up to you whether you think it's best to stay on the platforms and try to fight it that way, or go on the water and try to sneak it. This boss takes some time to learn its patterns, but honestly it's not all that bad. This is definitely one of the most memorable bosses in the game, and I do enjoy this fight. After defeating it fully, you'll be rewarded with the speed boost. The security robot BOX is the next boss you'll fight right after you get the super missile add-on. When this fight starts up, jump on the ladder above you to avoid being hit by its dash. While up here, you can shoot super missiles above it, but be careful because not only will it hop, it'll also frequently throw a bomb upward, which both of these attacks will knock you off if you get hit. The robot also has iframes while throwing a bomb, so you gotta shoot missiles quick. When the bomb hits the ground, it will cause 2 sets of fire to erupt and move in different directions. This will also knock you down. The best thing you can do besides shoot fast is try to sneak in some diagonal shots. I don't have too much to say on this boss. Once it's defeated, this boss will actually flee instead of dying. It's just a security robot after all, not an X-Parasite. Barrier Core X is by far one of the easiest bosses in the game. This boss will just mostly circle around, but not in a consistent pattern. It's protected by small versions of itself that will deal damage if you are hit by it. One more thing, this boss will only take damage from charge shots, which threw me the hell off the first time I fought it since, you know, I'm so conditioned to use missiles. But yeah, besides all that, this is an easy wrap up. Once you defeat it, you'll obtain the Varia suit. Now we move on to Yakuza, and oh boy, this fucking boss. So before I quickly dive in, I'd say this is the point where the difficulty spikes in the game, starting with this boss in the area surrounding it. When this boss first appears, it'll rain fire immediately, then drop itself down. Yakuza is a spider that moves in a pattern of a diamond, so this part is fairly simple outside of one thing: this stupid fucking command grab. If you get too close to Yakuza, he'll grab you and slam you down, deleting over 2 bars of energy. The worst part? You can't break out of it. You just have to hold the L on that. I've died so many times because of this move. After he moves around a little bit, he'll open his mouth and spit out some fire. That'll be your chance to shoot missiles into his mouth and damage it. You'll keep doing this until it enters the second phase. You'll know you're close to the second phase when the color of Yakuza actually begins to change. When this happens, he'll pretty much lose his whole body outside of his head. Yakuza's movement changes drastically here on, very similar to a certain power-up, but he'll still spit out fire the same way, just more radically, which means you gotta time your shots a bit more. You just gotta take some time to get used to the movement, but I promise you it's easier than it looks. After this, the core will be exposed. You got the dub pretty much when this happens. After beating him, you'll receive the space jump. Yeah, truth be told, I hate this boss so much just because of that damn grab, but I'd be lying if I said Yakuza wasn't a memorable boss. Definitely a solid difficulty increase. Notori is a plant-like boss that looks like it's covering a Chozo statue. When you drop down to this fight, try to land on a platform. You'll regret it if you don't. This boss is actually stationary but will drop spores out of these two plants. So what you need to do is constantly switch back and forth on shooting at the Chozo statue with missiles and shooting at the spores to prevent taking damage. Parts of this boss will begin to break off and eventually it will enter phase 2. This creature will start to shoot bursts of plasma beam fire, but if you made it this far, you shouldn't have any trouble ducking or jumping over these shots. Just be sure to keep yourself centered on the platform and eventually Notori will fall until the spiky shell core is exposed. This one shoots plasma beams, so to fully take it down, shoot at it right when it's about to fire a shot. This really won't take long. After defeating it, you'll be able to obtain the plasma beam. Okay, I know this is the one y'all want to hear about. Next up, Nightmare. My goodness help me. While you're exploring Sector 5 earlier on, you actually see a silhouette of a monster passing by every so often. The foreshadow for this fight was definitely worth the payoff because this boss is straight up a demon from hell. So this abomination will slowly rise from the ground when you enter its room. Just want to quickly mention this, Nightmare's theme is kind of a bop for a boss theme. I'm not gonna lie, it's very fitting for this fight. So on phase 1, you have to destroy its gravitational manipulator. You can do this by jumping high and baiting it to go high to then hit it with a charge shot or missile. Or alternatively, you can stay under Nightmare and take it out that way since it hovers only horizontally, but it's sort of a high risk, high reward scenario. Whichever works for you really. You'd repeat this until it enters phase 2. On phase 2, Nightmare will activate his gravitational manipulator, causing your movement to be slowed down significantly. Now the goal is still the same, and that is to attack the gravitational manipulator. You can still use missiles, but they will drop like a rock and barely hit their target, so you're better off using charge shots here. He'll only be able to shoot 2 beams instead of 6 like before, so just take this phase slow and steady. If you try to rush this boss down at this phase, you're gonna get cooked up. Do this a few times and the gravitational manipulator will be destroyed and Nightmare's face cover will fly off, exposing his weakness, initiating phase 3. On this phase, the manipulator is gone, so gravity will revert back to normal, but this is by far the toughest phase. So like I said, his face is his weakness, so it's best to use this ladder that's there and shoot directly at it, and I mean it. You gotta nail these shots. After he gets close enough, you have to use space jump and move out the way, but just know Nightmare will follow your exact movement. So you'd want to bait him to a position where you can do significant damage. You'll keep repeating this process until his face is fully melted off and eventually reverts back to the Corex. Finally, kill this and you'll be awarded with the gravity suit. Yeah, this is by far one of the creepiest and toughest bosses in the Metroid franchise. It took me almost an hour my first time alone trying to beat this boss. Seriously, this boss is no pushover and really lets the player know that they're really deep into this game. This is an endurance test that you have to respect. So while in the restricted area, you realize you need the wave beam to progress. You then head back and hear an explosion, go back a few rooms over and see the return of the BOX security robot. So when this fight starts, drop a power bomb to reveal the hidden ladder and climb up to it immediately. So this fight is more so the same as last time, but definitely tougher. Don't drop down by any means because the water is filled with electricity and will deal damage to you. Also, the BOX will now shoot homing missiles instead, which will not only knock you down, but will also knock off about 40 energy from you. Staying in the right hand corner and firing diagonally can definitely help since its jumps can't hit you from over there. But besides all that, this fight is the same as last time. Just keep hammering away at it with missiles and it will revert to a giant brain and then a hardcore X. After packing it up, you'll be rewarded with the wave beam. Not gonna lie, I sometimes forget you actually have to fight this boss twice, but the devs definitely made the run back a little bit more interesting, but I wouldn't call it amazing or anything. Now finally, we have Neo Ridley. So before I jump in, I really just have to ask, what is up with this scream? This shit is straight up ear piercing, and mixed with the GBA crunchy sound effects, it sounds absolutely cursed. Moving on, Neo really has an even bigger hitbox than Super, making it damn near impossible to dodge. He'll fly around the room, try to hit you with his tail, spit fireballs, and try to grab you. Honestly, now thinking about it, outside of the much bigger hitbox, seriously, this Ridley is huge. This boss really is just like Super's all over again. I would say this variant is about equal level to Super's or just a bit easier. Luckily, you don't need to get grabbed to end the fight, thankfully. He'll take about 110 missiles before he falls, but if you actually got some E-tanks and prepped for this fight, you should be able to wrap this up with not much trouble. Once he falls, the Corex will be revealed. Take it down and you'll be rewarded with the screw attack. Last thing, but I want to bring up the remix of the soundtrack specifically since, you know, Ridley's theme and all. Yeah, it's okay. It's not bad by any means, but I think this might be the weakest remix of Ridley's theme, but that's like saying this is the weakest version of Ridley's theme. It's still Ridley's theme at the end of the day, meaning at its worst, it's still good. And that is all the main bosses of Metroid Fusion outside of the final two, and I gotta say, I think they are on par with Supers as far as creativity. I think bosses like Yakuza, Sirius, and Nightmare really stick with you well after their fights. Also, the bosses showcasing the power-up you obtain from this area is a very nice touch. Wish more bosses did things like this, but I greatly appreciate it here. At this point, I'm going to dive into the story completely, so if you are interested in playing this game first, I'd recommend doing so, then coming back. Otherwise, let's begin. Upon landing in the BSL Station, Samus is tasked to investigate an explosion from the quarantine bay, since this area also had samples from the research team collected from SR-388. Samus encounters and kills a Hornode that had been infected by the X-Parasite. She then speaks with her new Starship computer that she has named Adam Malkovich after her old commanding officer, and finds out that the specimens brought back from the field team were all infected by the X. To make things simplified, I'm going to call the computer AI Adam for the rest of the video. AI Adam also reveals that the X can use the DNA of its prey to perfectly replicate its host, meaning any living organism on the BSL is liable to being killed and taken over by the X. As Samus continues to explore more of the BSL, we are shown an exact replica of Samus in her super fit with all of her abilities, but we are quickly shown this is the X at work. The X infected parts of her power suit and were able to make this abomination, deemed the SAX. It uses a power bomb to escape the quarantine bay, which not only causes the SAX to escape, but all the X as well to invade the entire BSL station. Samus talks to AI Adam and finds out all the news that she is too weak to take on the SAX in the state that she's currently in. SAX has the ice beam while Samus herself is weak to the cold, which really doesn't do her any favors. So now Samus has to explore throughout the BSL station to eradicate all of the X bosses and slowly regain all of her abilities while avoiding any interactions with the SAX. This game really sells the feeling of hopelessness more than any other game at this point. Seriously, if you run to the SAX, you're more than likely dead since it takes out almost 2 bars of health per hit. However, throughout your playthrough, you'll notice AI Adam's attitude begin to shift little by little and begin to notice something's off the more you speak to him. There's definitely some foul play at work. This will eventually reach its breaking point when she stumbles upon the restricted laboratory, which is just outside of Sector 6. It's here where she finds every variant of Metroid contained: Larva, Alpha, Gamma, and Zetas. While exploring a bit, Samus hears an explosion and decides to investigate. The SX was hot on her trail but stops in its tracks to eradicate all the Metroids that were in the laboratory since it's the natural predator to the X-Parasites. This initiates the lockdown and injection sequence. Samus escapes from the lab and is sent to space where it explodes. Samus then talks to AI Adam and she is told that the Federation had been secretly breeding Metroids for peaceful applications. Back up. Peaceful applications? The Federation forces at this point are creating bioweapons in the form of Metroids, which can be harnessed as a check to the real agenda. They want to recreate Peak Samus but give her enough brain rot to amass an army of SAX clones that they can control the galaxy via military might. Think about it. Why would the Federation forces gatekeep Samus from grabbing the diffuser missiles and the plasma beam, the two weapons an X-Parasite and Metroids are weak to? And they wanted Samus to be weak enough to harvest combat data on her, to recreate these dollar store bounty hunters with the Metroids being their safety switch to use as an emergency. The Federation has been plotting this since the day Samus eradicated all the Metroids. They've secretly been recreating life forms as they are playing God. How is it that there are 10 SAX in the space station? I don't blame Samus at all for questioning any of this, because this is absolutely fucking madness. So AI Adam tells her to escape back to her ship, which she starts doing. Her escape is hampered when she encounters a copy of the frozen, dry corpse of Ridley. So I should mention this very quickly. Once you beat this boss, you'll get the screw attack, meaning you have every power up in the game. This is when you can collect anything you missed, or if you're going for the 100% run, this would be the time to do it. Just avoid going into the navigation rooms, since you'll be locked out of the rest of the game once you do. Luckily, the sectors are all connected through mostly invisible blocks that can only be destroyed by the screw attack, so you pretty much can explore the entire game to find everything you need. Now I must warn you, the final boss is no joke, so you better really prep for this. But with that being said, let's move on. After packing up the imposter that's known as Neo Ridley, Samus speaks to AI Adam and is informed that the Federation are going to the BL station due to the interest they have taken towards the X. Samus tells AI Adam to call them off, but is told that they are already on their way. She is also told that the Federation withheld power-ups on purpose to stop her from growing too strong at a rapid pace. They didn't want her to stop the SAX. But Samus knows all too well if the Federation pulls up, they will quickly be overwhelmed by the X and all that information will be stolen. AI Adam then keeps Samus trapped in the navigation room to stop her from interfering with the Federation. Samus then calls the computer Adam and reveals to it that Adam was her old commanding officer who sacrificed his life to save her. AI Adam questions if Adam really made the right call saving Samus. Not gonna lie, I felt that in my soul when the computer said that shit. Like, that's messed up to really ask. Then suddenly AI Adam starts acting more like actual Adam by suggesting that she should alter the station's propulsion to intercept with SR-388 and destroy the planet along with all the X. Samus then realizes the computer is the consciousness of Adam himself, uploaded after his death. Now Samus has to pull up to the operations deck at the top of the main deck. Be sure to save before getting to the operations decks because this will be the last time you can do this before the game ends. Once she arrives, she's set to alter the course of the station. However, when she enters the room, the SAX finally pulls up. The tab is now to finally run the ones against the SAX. So just like before, the SAX will move fast and attack with both Screw Attack and Ice Beam. This may seem very little, but it's all it needs to be threatening. This boss is only weak to the charge beam, so the best thing to do is lure it and wait until it lands to then hit it with a charge beam. But the second you shoot your charge beam, you better fucking move, because SAX will not be stunned for long once you make a shot at it. You'll keep doing this for what feels like an eternity, chipping away at its health while the SAX does a lot of damage every time it shoots or even touches you. After some time, this SAX will mutate into a mix of Samus, X, and Metroid Abomination. All it'll do in this form is jump and try to land on you, but this is no sweat since it's big and slow. Once that's taken care of, the X score will appear, and you already know the song and dance number by now, but be careful of this one since it does shoot and can inflict quite a bit of damage. Once it's fully defeated, you can try to absorb the X inside. Well, that's what I would say if the X didn't flee before you got the chance to. Now with the SAX out the way, Samus sets the station to impact with SR-388 and the timer is initiated. Now is the time for the final escape. You'll eventually make it back to the docking bay, but when you get there, you'll not only see your ship isn't there, but an Omega Metroid waiting for you. So to save time, your attacks won't do anything to it, so just let it one-shot you. Before the Omega Metroid can finish the job, the X-Core reforms back into SAX to try to fight the Omega Metroid, but is too overwhelmed and eventually falls to it. But now this is the time you can absorb the X from it and obtain the Omega Suit and the Ice Beam. Now that you are fully equipped and back to full health, you actually have a fighting chance. So remember, you have a timer throughout all of this, so you gotta be quick. The Omega Metroid will try to slash you, which will take a tank off of your health and leave you stunned for about 5 seconds. The best way to take on this boss is literally just hit and run. If you see the Omega Metroid raising its arm to strike, just turn around and get away from it. You'll keep doing this until the Omega Metroid is destroyed. Your ship will show up right after, and you'll be able to fully escape before the BSL Station crashes into SR-388. And with that, the X have been eradicated and the galaxy is at peace. Except, y'all know that's bullshit. Congratulations, you beat Metroid Fusion. So I didn't know where else to add this, so I figured I'd make a small section to it here. I mentioned this earlier, but as great as this game is, the 100% run can be quite grueling at times. Now, it's not horrible. Getting every E-Tank does serve a solid purpose. However, getting every missile expansion and power bomb almost feels unnecessary outside of this. More so aimed towards the power bombs though. I mean, really, think about it. You start off with 10 power bombs when you actually get them. In this game going forward, when you get a power bomb expansion, it will only give you 2 instead of 5. Not really a huge downgrade, all things considered. It still clears out most enemies and exposes hidden blocks, so it still works the same as before outside of that. Overall, do y'all want to know how many power bombs are in this game? I'll tell y'all.
74.
Okay, why the fuck are there 74 of these things in the game? That is super overkill. All these things are useless in the final boss sections, so why are there so many? Not to also mention, a lot of these other expansions require near perfect Shine Spark. It's not as bad as Zero Mission. Oh, don't worry, I got words for that one for another day, but it's definitely a step down from Super when it comes to collecting everything. I have to endure blistering icy terrain mixed with some of the hottest volcanic areas in the game to then climb all throughout these sectors for what? Extra power bombs I have to frame perfect shine for? Yeah, no one is doing that unless you're going for the 100% run, and your reward is just to say you did it. That's all! You can't even use them in the final 2 fights since the bosses are only weak to charge shot for the most part. It kinda downplays getting every missile expansion on that behalf. Look, in reality, it's not a big deal, but it just makes going for the 100% in this game feel so unfulfilling, at least to me personally. I mean, I still did it for my second playthrough, but I didn't exactly feel much doing this. I'm not sure if I'm alone on this though. It might just be a me thing, but I find it really redundant trying to go for every power bomb and missile expansion because of this. So this title is definitely the most different Metroid, but by no means do I think it's actually a bad game. Actually, this may surprise a lot of y'all, but I think this game is actually better than Super, but it's very, very close. This title gave up a sense of freedom for a compelling story, and I know to some of y'all that is a turnoff, but for me, I'm definitely okay with that trade-off. I really do love this game, and it's such a joy to always go back to. Also, the art you get for completing the game is different every time, but it's still just chef's kiss. Absolutely beautiful. Going back to the tier list, this game goes right into S tier. Next time, we are going to take a slight detour to what might possibly be one of the greatest remakes of all time, Metroid Zero Mission. Y'all know the vibes. I'll see y'all real soon. Thanks for watching.